We now come to the statement. Minister of State Dan Jarvis.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I will make a statement on the series of national security-related arrests that took place on Saturday, the 3rd of May. Protecting our national security is the first duty of government, and it is a testament to our world-leading law enforcement and intelligence services that through their tireless commitment, so many plots against the UK have been thwarted. And I want to pay tribute to them again today for the work that they have done, not just this weekend, but in recent weeks and months on these important operations. The two operations that took place across multiple locations this weekend were significant and complex. They were some of the largest counter-state threats and counter-terrorism actions that we have seen in recent times. And I'm sure the whole House will want to join with me in thanking the police, the security services and other partner agencies across the country who showed their professionalism and expertise in carrying out these operations to keep our country safe. Now, honourable and right honourable members will understand that these are complex investigations. The police and the security services need the time and space to be able to pursue those investigations, and our first priority must be to protect the integrity of that work so we do not cut across those investigations and operations at a crucial time. However, these are serious matters and the House will rightly want to remain informed. I will therefore outline as much detail as I am able, and I hope that honourable and right honourable members will understand that there is a strict limit to what I can say at this stage, given investigations are now ongoing. Mr. Speaker, I would first like to outline the facts around the events on Saturday, the 3rd of May. Throughout that day, counter-terrorism police undertook a series of arrests relating to two separate investigations. In total, 8 men were arrested by the Metropolitan Police's Counter-Terrorism Command. 5 men were arrested on suspicion of preparation of a terrorist act, contrary to Section 5 of the Terrorism Act of 2006, as part of a proactive investigation in the areas of West London, Swindon, Rochdale, Stockport and Manchester. All 5 men are Iranian nationals. Whilst 4 of the individuals remain in police custody, the 5th individual has now been bailed with strict conditions. As part of the investigation, police officers carried out searches at a number of addresses in the Greater Manchester, London and Swindon areas. Investigations continue with searches and activity still underway at multiple addresses across the country. The investigation relates to a suspected plot to target specific premises. Police officers have been in contact with the affected site to make them aware and provide relevant security advice and support. However, the police have also been clear that for reasons of operational security and public safety, they are not, and I am not, able to provide further information on the target at this time. And I would urge members not to speculate on the site. In a separate police investigation, 2 men were arrested at 2 different addresses in northwest London, and 1 man was arrested at an address in West London. All 3 were arrested under the National Security Act of 2023. These 3 men are also Iranian nationals and remain in police custody. I can confirm to the House that these are the first Iranian nationals arrested under the National Security Act. The operations to execute these 8 arrests under both counter-terror and counter-state threat powers in different parts of the country in the space of 24 hours were intensive. They involved a range of different organisations, including different police forces, counter-terror police, the National Crime Agency, and our security and intelligence services. These operations were coordinated through the world-leading Counter-Terrorism Operations Centre, or CTOC, which brings together and coordinates the UK's agencies alongside the agencies of our Five Eyes partners to detect and tackle national security threats. I welcome the work of the previous government to establish CTOC in 2021, which this government has continued to support and invest in since taking office. The significant point about both counter-terrorism and counter-state threats powers is that they allow the police to intervene early to prevent and disrupt threats, not just respond after events have taken place. This is crucial for public safety, but it also makes the investigations more complex, and that is why the police need the time and space to pursue them now. So we will not be providing a running commentary on the work that they are doing. But what now follows is an incredibly complex set of investigations involving hundreds more officers carrying out forensic searches, collecting vital evidence across different sites across the country, and securing witness statements backed up by the continued efforts of our security and intelligence agencies. This is careful, painstaking work. Mr. Speaker, at this stage in the operations and investigations, it would not be appropriate for me to speculate on or comment further on the details of these two cases and the motivations behind any of the threats that were posed. But the House will be aware that these operations come against a backdrop of complex, interconnected threats to the UK, where state threats and counter-terrorism, as well as serious and organised crime, are intertwined together. For 20 years, the greatest focus of our national security work was on terrorism, primarily from Islamist terrorism, with additional threats from Northern Ireland-related terrorism and other areas, and those threats have not gone away. 15 terrorist attacks have taken place since 2017, and there have been 43 late-stage disruptions of terrorism plots. But alongside that, we have seen a serious, growing and complex challenge from state threats. Last year, Sir Ken McCallum, the Director General of MI5, said that MI5 state threat investigations had increased by 48% in the previous 12 months. He added that since January 2022, the police and MI5 had responded to 20 Iran-backed plots presenting potentially lethal threats. In March, I told Parliament that the UK is facing a growing and evolving threat from malign activity carried out by a number of states. My statement in March outlined the government's response to the unacceptable threat that we face from the Iranian state and the steps we are taking to ensure that our intelligence and law enforcement agencies have the tools they need to disrupt and degrade Iran's malign activity on UK soil, and we have delivered on the commitments made. I announced that the whole of the Iranian state, including the IRGC and MOIS, would be placed on the enhanced tier of the Foreign Influence Registration Scheme, and I laid the regulations to make this happen in the House on the 1st of April and committed to bring the scheme into force on the 1st of July. I trust that all members will vote in favour when those regulations are debated shortly. Let me be clear, anyone in the UK who works for the Iranian state must declare it, or they will be committing a serious criminal offence. We will also go after the criminal networks and enablers that Iran used to carry out its work, and the government sanctioned the Foxtrot network last month, a network involved in violence against Jewish and Israeli targets in Europe on behalf of the Iranian regime. Training and guidance on state threats activity is now being offered by counter-terrorism policing to all 45 territorial polices across the UK. And the independent reviewer of terrorism and state threats legislation, Jonathan Hall KC, was asked by the Home Secretary to review the parts of our counter-terrorism framework which could be applied to modern-day state threats such as those from Iran. The Home Secretary specifically asked the reviewer to look at a state threats prescription tool so we are not held back in limitations in applying counter-terrorism legislation to state threats. Jonathan Hall has now completed his review and will publish it shortly. and the government will not hesitate to take action in response to Mr Hall's advice. As we continue to support the police and the security services in their investigations, I can also tell the House that the Home Secretary has instigated a series of security assessments which are being done or being refreshed in the light of the cases this weekend and the further information surrounding them. This will ensure that the government can respond robustly and comprehensively to any wider national security issues raised by these cases. Mr Speaker, working alongside our international allies in countering state threats is central to our success. The Foreign Office are engaging with our closest allies to outline the disruptive action that has taken place and will be considering potential future response options as the investigation progresses. The Home Secretary remains in close contact with my Right Honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, who I know is committed to doing everything that is necessary to protect the country from these threats and to bring to bear all the diplomatic tools at our disposal. Mr Speaker, the Home Secretary and Ministers will provide an update on the national security position when we are able to do so, both following these operations and investigations and the wider security assessments that are underway. The government will not hesitate to act in a robust manner to respond to these plots at the appropriate time, but first we must allow the investigations to continue. Our police, security and intelligence agencies are the best in the world and stand ready at all times to take action to keep our country safe. I am sure that they will have the support of the whole House as they continue this vital work. I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Minister Matt Vickers.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'd like to thank the Minister for providing advance sight of the statement on this critical issue. People will have read the deeply concerning report suggesting that an attack may have been just hours away. This will understandably be worrying to people across the country. This statement reminds us of the tragic incidents that have plagued our country in the past. This month marks 12 years since the death of Lee Rigby on our streets. It also marks 8 years since the horrific Manchester Arena bombing. And later this year will mark the 20th anniversary of the 7/7 attacks, which brought a level of destruction to London that many of us never thought we would see in our lifetimes. These acts of terror, along with other cowardly acts, cause untold hurt to victims and their families. As we discuss the arrests over the past weekend, we must remember the importance of keeping the British public safe from those who seek to terrorise us. I therefore pay tribute to the hard-working members of the police and the intelligence services for their bravery in disrupting terrorist activities. In October, the head of MI5 said that together the police and MI5 had disrupted 43 late-stage attack plots since the Manchester bombing. We must remember that each of these cases is not merely a statistic, but represents someone's life and someone's future. I commend the Minister for recognising the work of the previous government and for acknowledging the measures that were used effectively in this incident. In turn, I know that we'll support measures that enact the National Security Act and give the government the powers needed to act against malign influences on our country. Turning to the incident at hand, I'd be grateful if the Minister could clarify certain points. While I'm thankful for today's statement, I hope the government will, moving forwards, be as transparent as possible about the details to avoid the vacuum of information we've previously discussed in this place. Even though I appreciate that the government does not want to provide a running commentary, I, and I'm sure many other members, would be grateful if it could be as open as possible, given the seriousness of the arrests. As the Minister has outlined, there were 2 separate arrests of Iranian nationals in relation to terror offences. These raise serious questions about how their networks were formed and what their intentions were. Can the Minister provide any further information about the suspects? For example, while we know they were Iranian nationals, what is their immigration status? Was the state aware that these individuals were in the UK? And was there any prior indication of the risk they might pose? In addition, on the broader issue of Iran, while I understand the Minister may not be able to comment on proscription directly, The Home Secretary did address this while in opposition. In July 2023, she told the Royal United Services Institute, instead of trying and failing to use counter-terror legislation to prescribe organisations like Wagner and IRGC, we'll introduce a bespoke prescribing mechanism to address state-sponsored threats. The Home Secretary also said at the dispatch box in April 24 that it wanted appropriately targeted prescription-style restrictions on the operations of state-linked organisations such as IRGC. However, it was only in March this year that the Security Minister announced the review by Jonathan Hall. Does the Minister share my concerns that these mixed signals and the delay suggest a lack of prioritisation from the Government? Ultimately, we must all work together to ensure that the UK adopts the strongest possible stance on national security. Cross-party cooperation is essential. I therefore urge the Government to take every possible step to prevent these cowardly acts of terror.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Shadow Minister for, I think, the very sensible, reasonable and constructive tone of his response. And can I also say to him, he's absolutely right to draw the House's attention to the tragic death of Lee Rigby, the tragic bombing in Manchester, and, of course, the 20th anniversary of the 7/7 bombings that we will be commemorating in a couple of months' time. Let me again join with him in paying tribute to all of those who work tirelessly to keep our country safe. It is one of the greatest privileges of this particular role that we have the opportunity to serve in government, as members opposite will have done also, and work very closely alongside those incredibly committed members of the police and the intelligence services, and I think we owe them a debt of gratitude. I'm also grateful for the opportunity, because he raised it again, to offer our thanks for the work that was done by the previous government, both in terms of the introduction of the National Security Act, which has proved to be an incredibly valuable tool, but also, and I referenced it in my earlier statement, the creation of CTOC, which is delivering very significant operational value. And I can absolutely give an assurance that this government will continue to invest in that institution, as the previous government did as well. I thought he made an important point about transparency, and I can absolutely give him the reassurances that he seeks. He will understand, and the House will understand, that we are just a couple of days on from these arrests taking place on Saturday. The Home Secretary will provide a further update as soon as we are operationally able to do so. And I give him a commitment that we will be as transparent as we possibly can, whilst, of course, ensuring that we do not cut across live counter-terrorism operations. He mentioned prescription, and I understand why he asks the question. I know that he will acknowledge, or at least I hope he will, that on the 4th of March I announced a very strong suite of measures designed to most effectively address the nature of the threat that we face from Iran. Contained within those measures announced on the 3rd of March was a request from the Home Secretary for Jonathan Hall, who I know is held in very high regard because of the experience, the credibility that he has in this area, to look very carefully at the legislative framework that might enable us to more effectively prescribe state-based entities. I can confirm that Mr Hall has completed his report. The Home Secretary and I are considering it very carefully. It will be published shortly, and I give him an assurance that we won't hesitate to act where there is a requirement to bring forward further measures.
Burger.
The Minister will be aware that a number of Iranian citizens in this country still have relatives in Iran, and it's not beyond the wit of the Iranian government to use that pressure on them. So in making the requirement to report to our government for citizens of Iran in this country, if they are in any way connected with the Iranian government, how has he taken measures to protect them from exposing their family to the pressure that the Iranian government may put on them?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think that the honourable member raises a very important point. I can give him the assurances that we seek. The government has been very carefully considering the matter of transnational repression, and we will have more to say about it in the near future. But I can give him an absolute assurance that we have been thinking carefully about these matters. We take them incredibly seriously, and the Home Secretary and I will have more to say in the near future.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Lisa Smart.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the Minister for advance sight of his statement and for updating the House this afternoon. I also want to add my thanks to the security services and the police for all their work to keep us safe. Over recent years, this House has been called into the Chamber to discuss plots to commit acts of terror on Britain's streets at the hands of the Iranian regime. And yet, consecutive governments are yet to prescribe the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organisation. In opposition, the now Foreign Secretary said himself that the IRGC is behaving like a terrorist organisation and must now be prescribed as such. Earlier this year, I asked the Minister precisely this question. Does the Minister not agree that now is surely the time? In some of his earlier remarks, the Minister mentioned the review that's concluded, and if now isn't the time for prescription, when should the House expect a further update? Further, the Liberal Democrats have welcomed previous sanctions against those linked to the Iranian regime. However, I must urge the government to go a step further and look closely at whether these individuals and others with links to the regime have assets here in the UK. Will the Minister commit to carrying out an audit so that we know where those assets are, enabling the government to freeze them as appropriate? And the Minister is right to reference the long-standing pattern of targeting people of the Jewish faith and of Israeli nationality by the Iranian intelligence service. Could the Minister update the House on any conversations he has had with the UK Jewish community leadership, and specifically the CST, about threats here in the UK?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Honourable Lady for, as is always the case, the very sensible and reasonable way in which she's phrased her questions. And let me say to her, I'm always available to discuss these matters in more detail should she wish to do so. She asked about prescription, and I hope that she will acknowledge the response I gave to the Shadow Minister just a few moments ago. We take these matters incredibly seriously. The Home Secretary and I looked at these matters very closely in opposition, and that's precisely why the Home Secretary commissioned Jonathan Hall, and he's the right person to look very carefully at our legislative framework and make recommendations about whether, frankly, we can toughen and strengthen the laws that we have in this particular area. Mr. Hall has now concluded his report. We are looking very closely at it. It will be published shortly, and as I said to the Shadow Minister, we will not hesitate to bring forward further measures as they are required. She made, I thought, an important and helpful point about sanctions and assets. I know that that is a question that will have been heard by Foreign Office Minister, with whom we work incredibly carefully. We work hard to ensure that our response is always as joined up across government as it possibly can be, and the Home Secretary works very closely with the Foreign Secretary, and I work very closely with the Minister on these matters, but we will consider whether there are further measures that need to be taken. Her final point was a very important one about the Jewish community, and I give her and the whole House an absolute commitment that we will work tirelessly to ensure the safety of the Jewish community in our country. The Home Secretary and I and other ministers are in very regular contact with members of that community, including the CST that she referenced, who do an excellent job. I will be meeting them in the very near future, but she can be absolutely reassured that we will work very closely with them to ensure that they not only get the protection that they need and deserve, but the assurances that they will rightly want as well.
Paul Wall.
I'd like to pay tribute to the bravery and the professionalism of the counter-terrorist specialist firearms officers who took part in the arrest of an Iranian national in Rochdale over the weekend. It was indeed a reminder of the constant threat that we face, but also of the intelligence and police services' daily work to keep us all safe. But does the Minister agree with me that in this week of the 80th anniversary of VE Day, it's a reminder too that Britain is at war with a modern enemy, the fascism of Islamist extremism and state-sponsored terrorism? The message should go out loud and clear that my town, our country and this House will never surrender to such terrorism or to its ideology.
Well, the Honourable Member, I think, makes a very powerful and important point, and he's, of course, absolutely right. This government will never drop its guard to the threats that we face, whether that is counter-terrorism, whether that is the specific threat around Islamist extremism, whether that is around the state threats that we undoubtedly face. This government takes these matters incredibly seriously, and we will work to ensure that all of our security services and the police forces have the resources and the tools that they need to address the threats that we face.
Chair of the Select Committee, Dame Karen Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Minister for his statement? No one in this House should be in any doubt about the threat that Iran poses to us and our national security. How confident is he that the designation in the enhanced tier of the Foreign Influence Registration Scheme will be effective? Is he looking to go further?
Well, I'm grateful to the Right Honourable Lady for the work that she does as Chair of the Select Committee. I do believe that FIRS is a very important measure falling out of the National Security Act. It is a measure that we inherited from the previous government. I think it is the right approach, and I think it will deliver significant operational benefit. But we also have to look at these matters in the round, so it doesn't sit on its own in isolation, and it has to be accompanied by a range of other measures, not least the measures that I announced on the 4th of March. But the government will remain flexible and agile, and if we think that there is a need for further action, then we will not hesitate to take it.
Alex Sub.
Mr. Speaker, my committee, the Joint Committee on Human Rights, is currently undertaking an inquiry on transnational repression. We have reams of evidence of Iran oppressing, of taking action against people of Iranian heritage here in the UK. I heard what the Minister said about prescription. I've asked for prescription of the RGC many times, who are certainly one of the bodies in Iran who are responsible for transnational repression. But could he just outline what will happen after the publication of John Hall's review and what the timetable will be, as we are keen to see swift action in this area?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, let me say to the Honourable Member that I'm looking forward, if that's the right way to describe it, to giving evidence to his committee in the near future. I can confirm, as I said to the Honourable Member previously, that this government has done a lot of work looking at the serious but complicated issue of transnational repression. The government will have more to say about this in the near future, and as I say, I look forward to providing more evidence to his committee, but I give him an assurance that we take these matters incredibly seriously. We have progressed at pace the work that we inherited from the previous government. These are not simple matters. These are matters that require a whole system approach. These are matters that we are working carefully across government through the Defending Democracy Task Force. But I give an assurance the Home Secretary and I will have more to say in the near future.
Fire of the House, Sir Edward Lee.
Do we know whether these men entered the country illegally or legally? Obviously, people who enter this country legally are subject to extraordinarily sophisticated surveillance at our airports and ports. Yeah. But people who enter illegally, there is no surveillance at all. It's completely madness that thousands are entering our country with no checks at all. Isn't this a good opportunity to seek a derogation from the Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg and say, because of our national security, we should have the right to detain these people, arrest them and rapidly deport them?
Yeah.
Well, I'm grateful to him for the very long-standing experience that he brings to this House. So he will understand, for the reasons that I've already outlined, that there are very strict limitations on what ministers can say at this point, because it would be unforgivable, frankly, to cut across a live counter-terrorism investigation. The police have set out the Iranian nationality of those arrested, and at this particular moment they need the time to pursue various lines of inquiry and investigation. As I hope that he and other honourable members will understand, as a consequence of that, it would be wrong for ministers to provide a running commentary on individuals' details at this stage, because, as members would expect, a wide range of security assessments are underway. The Home Secretary will set out further details at an appropriate moment in due course.
John Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the Minister for his statement and also join him in thanking the incredible work and dedication of our security services and our police. This is a sobering reminder of the threat posed by the Iranian regime here in the UK and reinforces the need to proscribe Iran's terror army, the IRGC, here in the UK. We continue to hear disturbing reports of charities in the UK being used as vehicles for funding and organisation of terrorism. Will the Minister set out what steps are being taken to stop this organisation, and will he meet with me to discuss these concerns further?
Well, I'm grateful to him for the work that he does in this particular area, and he's absolutely right to make the point, as he does, about the grave threat. I hope that he will have seen the suite of measures that the government brought forward on the 4th of March. These were new measures that will make a very significant difference and will give us additional resources and capabilities in order to address the threat. I can give him assurance that we take these matters incredibly seriously. As I mentioned, that there are a series of security assessments that are currently underway. The Home Secretary will report back to the House in due course on those. But of course, I'd be very happy to meet him to discuss these matters further.
Can I thank the Minister for what he said about the work of the previous government and join him in commending the work of our security services and police in keeping us safe. Now, recent events are a reminder of the destabilising role that Iran plays. 20 Iran-backed plots foiled in the UK in just the past few years. This state sponsor of terrorism cannot be allowed to have nuclear weapons. So on that topic, could I urge the government to push our European allies to jointly trigger snapback sanctions this year as part of a comprehensive strategy to put maximum pressure on the Iranian regime?
Can I thank the Right Honourable Gentleman for his question and for the work that he did as Prime Minister. He knows better than most about the extraordinary capabilities that those men and women who serve in our intelligence and police forces have and the commitment that they make to our country. I think he made important points. He's completely right about the number of state-sponsored plots. That is totally unacceptable, and this government, as was the case with the previous government, are absolutely clear that we will do everything that we can to stand against them. He made an important point, I think, about the importance of working closely with our colleagues and partners in Europe and internationally. He's right. That is the approach that we will adopt, and I know that the colleagues in the Foreign Office are thinking very carefully about what more we can do in that area.
McKee. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Minister for his statement and join him in paying tribute to the security services who keep us all safe. Now, as the Minister will know, the UK is under constant cyber attack from foreign states, including Iran. So can I ask the Minister to update the House on what work the Home Office is doing to protect the UK from ransomware attacks?
Well, I'm very grateful to him because he raises a very important point about cyber attacks, which we face along with countries right around the world. I hope that he will know that the Home Office has recently concluded a consultation on new measures specifically with regard to ransomware. These are world-leading measures that we believe will make a material difference to the nature of the threat that we face. Because essentially what we want to do is smash the business models of those cyber criminals, many of whom operate out of Russia, targeting UK businesses. These measures would be good for our national security, but also good for our economic prosperity. And I can give him an assurance that we are progressing them at pace.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was alarmed to hear that one of these incidents took place in my constituency of Cheadle. It's chilling to think that a regime with such a shocking record of international aggression could have connections into our neighbourhoods. It just so happens I was meeting with the Jewish community in Cheadle this weekend to talk through the issues and concerns that they have. And at this meeting, I heard about how fearful they are of the threat of violence and terrorism from the Iranian regime. So therefore, can I ask the Minister to commit to providing a timeline and producing that report into the IRGC? and also commit into a timeline of when we are finally going to prescribe that organisation?
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank him for the points that he makes? He's right about the chilling effect of these arrests, and it also underlines the nature of the threat not being specific to any one part of the country. He pressed me on the point that I'd made earlier with regard to prescription. Jonathan Hall, who, as I have said previously from the dispatch box, is someone of great credibility and authority, was asked by the Home Secretary to look carefully at our legislative framework in order to assess whether there are stronger powers that we need in order to be able to prescribe state-backed threats. Mr Hall has worked at pace and has now submitted his report to the Home Secretary and I. The report itself will be published shortly, and as I've said previously, the government will respond in due course, and I know that the Home Secretary will update the House at the earliest available moment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Security Minister will know that whenever there are reports of hostile acts by Iranian nationals in this country, the Jewish community in Britain have reason to be fearful. So can he update the House on the steps the government is taking to guarantee the safety of Jewish people throughout the UK?
Well, I'm grateful to him for the point that he has made, and I give him a categorical assurance that this government, as was the case with the previous government, will work incredibly closely with the Jewish community to provide them the assurances that they rightly want and deserve. It's completely unacceptable that any sector of our community could be threatened, whether that's by terrorism or by a state-based threat. Home Secretary and I and other ministers are in regular contact with the CST and a range of other organisations from the Jewish community, and we will work tirelessly to ensure that not only are they safe, but that they feel safe.
Sir Julian.
In the fullness of time, it will undoubtedly be revealed what the targets of these terrorist plots were going to be. If it turns out that one of them, again, was the broadcaster Iran International that had to relocate to Washington temporarily in 2023, will the Minister undertake to speak with his Foreign Office colleagues about the importance of impressing on the Trump administration that these repressive regimes fear free broadcasting agencies, and that's why the Trump administration should not be closing down Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, or indeed Voice of America itself?
Well, the Right Honourable Gentleman, as he always does, makes a very sage point, and he's absolutely right. There is an incredibly important relationship that the UK has with the United States. That is a relationship that we invest significantly in, and we think that that is not only in our national interest, but the national interest of the United States and other Five Eyes partners. I can give him an assurance that the question that he has just raised will be heard by colleagues, and I see the Minister nodding in the Foreign Office, but I'm keen to work closely with him and draw upon his experience in this area, and I agree with the point and the thrust of the direction of the points that he's made.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for coming here with this statement today. And can I also put on my record, and I'm sure the thanks also of the people of Harlow to the police and security services for the work they do, keeping us all safe. In his statement, the Minister made reference to working with allies, and I wonder whether he agrees with me that the conversation he has with our allies, both in Europe and in America, are key to tackling this problem proactively and ensuring that lives are saved.
Well, firstly, can I thank him for the point he made about our police forces, who do a very difficult job, but I think do it incredibly well. And it was deeply impressive to see their work over the course of the weekend. I think he makes an important point about international cooperation. Home Secretary, myself, other ministers, and right across the government completely understand the importance of investing in these relationships with our international allies. These are matters that we are not going to solve unilaterally on our own. We need to cooperate, collaborate with a range of international partners, both in Europe, in North America and further afield. and I can give him an assurance that that will be the approach of this government.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I too pay tribute to the brilliance of our security forces. The Minister has paid tribute to the quality of advice from Jonathan Hall, KC, the independent reviewer of terrorism, and said that he will indeed listen to that advice. Well, that same Jonathan Hall, KC, last autumn advised that in serious incidences involving terror and these sorts of incidents, it would be better to put out more information sooner in order to prevent misinformation. And in order to prevent misinformation, surely the Minister should tell us and the British people who want to know, how long have these Iranian nationals been in this country and what is their immigration status?
Well, let me say to the honourable member that that's precisely why I made the point to the Shadow Minister about the importance of transparency. It's precisely why the government have proactively brought forward a statement to the House today in order to give members the opportunity to ask questions. And it's precisely why, earlier on, I gave a commitment that the Home Secretary will come and update the House when we are operationally able to do so. I know that the honourable member understands the importance of not cutting across a live police terrorism operation. I hope he will acknowledge that we take these matters incredibly seriously, that we brought forward a range of measures in March that goes a long way towards addressing the nature of the threat that we face. I hope he acknowledges the serious nature with which we always take these matters. But I say to him, I'm very happy to discuss these matters with him outside of this chamber, should he wish to do so.
Jacob Collier.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I also pay tribute to our security and intelligence services in foiling what appears to be a highly coordinated plot. And the involvement of Iranian nationals points to a potential state-backed threat. So can the Minister assure me and my constituents that our intelligence and legal frameworks are keeping pace with the growing sophistication of hostile activity on British soil?
Well, I'm grateful to him. I can give him the assurance that our intelligence and legal frameworks have the necessary resource in order to ensure that we are best prepared to face the nature of the threat that undoubtedly we do face. But I can also say to him, the Home Secretary, Prime Minister and ministers across government will not hesitate to act should there be a requirement to bring forward further measures. That is precisely why the Home Secretary asked Mr Hall to look at the legislative framework. That is precisely why we are carefully considering his recommendations. But absolutely, I give an assurance that should there be a need to bring forward further powers, then we will not hesitate to do so.
David Reid.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's clear that the issues that we're seeing from Iran and its proxies are shared across many European countries as well. And the Minister raised the recent government sanctions on the Foxtrot network. However, the EU has just rejected the PM's bid to access the bloc's crime and migration database. Does the Minister see this as an issue and something that will stop us thwarting future threats against Iran and its proxies?
Let me respond to him in this way. As I've said previously, whilst there are certain measures that we could put in place in this country, and of course we will, it is imperative that we cooperate closely with our allies. And the nature of the relationship that we have with our allies in Europe is fundamentally important in this regard. I can give him an assurance that Foreign Office ministers, Foreign Secretary, the Minister, will be looking very closely at what's happened over previous days, talking to our allies and taking every opportunity to ensure that we organise collectively to ensure that those states who think that they can behave in an aggressive way towards this and other countries understand that there will be very severe consequences for their actions.
Dr. Andrew Morrison.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Does the Minister agree with me that part of the problem of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action that the US withdrew from in 2018 was that it wasn't comprehensive enough, in that it completely ignored the actions of Iran through proxy groups and terror cells? When he and his colleagues are discussing with the US administration the way forward, particularly in relation to the Witkoff talks, will he ensure that terrorism is covered as part of any agreement hatched.
Thank you. So I think that's an important point the Right Honourable Gentleman has made. It is one that the Minister and I will consider further, but I can give him an assurance about our understanding and the priority that we attach to the international dynamic to all of this. He will understand, as a former minister, and he's been around a long time, that international relations requires us to work as collaboratively as we possibly can with our partners. We are investing heavily in ensuring that the special relationship that we have continues to deliver for our country and for other Five Eyes partners as well. The points that he has made are well made. We have heard them, we will consider them further, but I assure him we take these matters very seriously and we will work across government to address the issues that he raises.
Gregory Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I join with the Minister in paying tribute to our security services in their endeavours to keep us all safe. Would the Minister agree with me that the issue of how these suspects get into the United Kingdom in the first place is a crucial issue, and one that has he addressed with the Irish Republic's government regarding people who don't come in here directly but come in under the radar via Dublin and then into Northern Ireland and into mainland GB?
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Prime Minister has said that border security is national security. So the Honourable Member, I think, makes important points. That is precisely why I confirmed earlier on that as a consequence of recent events, the Home Secretary is looking very carefully, along with other Home Office ministers, at a number of areas. And at the earliest available opportunity, she will come back to this House and provide an update.
John Whittingdale.
5 weeks ago, I visited Iran International at their location in London. They told me that their journalists face daily threats from Iran, as do those who work for the BBC Persian service. Given it's just 3 days after World Press Freedom Day, will the Minister reiterate this government's absolute determination to defend media freedom at home as well as abroad, and will he consider accepting the invitation to visit Iran International to reinforce that message?
Well, I'm very grateful to the Right Honourable Gentleman, who has been a very long-standing champion of both journalism and journalists, and I think he makes some very important points. I know that the Minister on the front bench from the Foreign Office has recently met with BBC Persia journalist colleagues, and between us we'll look very carefully at the invite that the Right Honourable Gentleman has extended. But let me be crystal clear that the threats that we have seen in recent time to Iran International are completely unacceptable. And this government, like the previous government, will do everything to ensure that free speech in this country is not materially affected by those out with the country who would wish to silence others. So we take these matters incredibly seriously. In response to a question earlier on, I said that the government will have more to say about transnational repression in due course, and that very much includes matters such as the ones that the Right Honourable Gentleman has raised.
Dame Harriet Baldwin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'm going to try again because I appreciate that the Security Minister has to be very careful about the specific aspects of this case, but I do think the House needs to know and the country needs to know whether the Iranian nationals in this case came into the UK illegally or under a legal migration route.
She's a very experienced member of this House, so I hope she can understand why, as the Security Minister, it would be wrong of me to cut across a live police terrorism investigation. Ministers should not be getting in front of or in the way of ongoing proceedings. And I hope that she will acknowledge the point I made earlier on about the complexity of the ongoing investigations. There are still properties around the country that are being searched by police officers. That is precisely why I've come here today to give a statement and update the House with the information that it is appropriate to update. But I've also given a very clear commitment that at the earliest available opportunity, the Home Secretary will come back to this place and give more details at a moment where it is operationally appropriate to do so.
Me. Oh, sorry, Madam Speaker. Yes, hello there. The Minister says in his statement that these were some of the largest, quote, largest counter-state threats and counter-terrorism actions we have seen in recent times. But if that's the case, I just wondered why the Iranian ambassador has not been summoned to the Foreign Office, and he mentioned liaising with the Foreign Secretary earlier. And on the issue of immigration status, that is not a police or counter-terrorism operational matter. It is a visa issue. So were any of these Iranian nationals dual nationals? Were they here on work visa or student visas? And were those visas issued at post or somewhere else around the world through another embassy or consulate? Previously, we've had incidents in this country where there have been vacuums of information, and when the government have not been prepared to fill that vacuum with truth and facts, others who want to stir up trouble in our nation have filled it instead.
I'm always grateful to him for the experience that he brings to these very important matters, and he's certainly right. This was a very significant operation that required a considerable amount of coordination across the weekend, and as I've explained, it is ongoing. It's very important that I don't in any way prejudice those inquiries, but I understand why he's made the point in the way that he has. I can say to him that there's been very close contact between the Home Secretary and the Foreign Secretary about these matters, and I can also say to him that the Minister from the Foreign Office, currently sat on the front bench, will be meeting with the Iranian ambassador to discuss these matters.
Jim Allister.
If, as the Prime Minister says, border security is national security, how can there be national security if there are no border checks on illegal immigrants at the international frontier between the United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland? How then do we get security if we fail and refuse to carry out those fundamental checks?
Well, that's precisely why I referenced the Prime Minister's comments about the importance of border security and border security being national security, and precisely why I said that the Home Secretary and the Immigration Minister are looking very carefully at what happened over the weekend, but at other incidences as well. We won't hesitate to act where there is a requirement to do so, and as I've said, the Home Secretary will update the House on these matters further.
Lincoln John.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for coming here with this statement today. I don't want to probe the out-of-bounds box that the Minister has quite rightly placed around the live investigation, but I therefore have chosen the words of this question very carefully. Does he know the immigration status of the Iranian nationals who were arrested?
I am grateful to him, and I pay tribute to his service in our armed forces before coming to this House. I hope, in part because of that background, he will understand that the one thing that I am not going to do is make things more difficult for those who serve in and out of uniform doing a very difficult job. I can say to him that the Home Secretary and I know what we need to know, but we are not going to get into a running commentary, but I've made a very clear commitment that the Home Secretary will come back at the earliest available opportunity and respond to the questions that honourable members wish to put to her. But what we are not going to do is cut across a live police operation. Honourable members opposite and around the House would never rightly forgive us for doing so. We're not going to do it, but we are committed to providing as much information as we possibly can at a point where it does not compromise ongoing operations.
Final question from this statement, Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Minister very much for
his wise words, his strong words, his confident words, the words that I think every one of us in this House wishes to have in relation to the investigation. I have, in all my time in this chamber, some 14 coming 15 years, been a supporter of the Iranian diaspora, those who live in the United Kingdom and who fled Iran because of the threats that were made upon them in their lives. Some of them got out by the skin of their teeth. They have genuine fears, they have concerns about what happens, and those concerns have been expressed by some of those who've been Iranian diaspora who've been under some attack in France and Paris is one example, but also in Sweden. During the last election, that Iranian diaspora very kindly offered support to me and my election campaign, and I took advantage of that, as others did as well. What concerns me is those in Northern Ireland who are members of that Iranian diaspora feel threatened as well, just as the ones here do in the mainland. When it comes to offering the support and the protection that they need, that will involve the partnership with the Garda Síochána in the Republic of Ireland to ensure that the threat will not come from just within Northern Ireland, could potentially come from the Republic of Ireland. So can the Minister give me and my constituents and those who are committed to a change of the regime in Iran but who cannot return because the regime is so decadent and so violent and so evil?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Well, I'm very grateful to him, as I always am. He's got a very long-standing track record of standing up for those who've been persecuted based on their ethnicity or their religion. And I think he raises a very important point about the Iranian diaspora in this country. That is precisely why this government has progressed an important piece of work on transnational repression. We will work very closely through the Defending Democracy Task Force to ensure that all of the necessary protections are in place for those individuals or communities who feel threatened. My advice to anybody who does feel that they are threatened is that they do need to report that to the police. But it's precisely why I've also recently written to all chief constables right around the country to ensure that the training that is available for frontline officers is being taken up by the police forces right around the country, because it's very important that officers on the beat have the necessary understanding about the nature of the threat that many different diaspora communities might face. So I'm grateful to him for championing not only his constituency but the Iranian diaspora, and I give him the same commitment that I've made to other right honourable and honourable members, that this government will work tirelessly to ensure that they are protected.
That concludes the statement, and I'll give the front benches a few moments to swap over.